What is wrong with you, mother? This is not right. Let these people be and stop controlling their lives. Chico does not deserve this. Do you even know if your son is not the one with the problem? Have you even thought about finding a medical solution? Obiagile's head sparked. How dare you say that, Adaeze? My son is as healthy as a horse. Amaka is a proof that he is a man. That barren woman should know her place. If she cannot produce a child, then she should give honor to someone who is productive. If she is not happy, then she can go back to her poverty-stricken father's house.
Chugo and her husband, Kingsley, lived a quiet life in a peaceful town in the eastern part of Nigeria. Their marriage was not born from the sparks of love. Rather, it was arranged, carefully orchestrated by their families. Unlike most couples who fall in love and choose each other, their union was born out of desperation. Let's go back to how it started. Kingsley was the pride and joy of his mother, Obiagili. As her only son, he was the golden child. Obiageli had married Chief Obi, a wealthy oil magnate, and they were blessed with 5 daughters before Kingsley finally arrived. From the moment he was born, he became Obiageli's world, and she shielded him from the harsh realities of life. Chief Obi, however, was not so pleased with how his son was being raised. One evening, after watching Kingsley laze about while his sisters did all the work, he could not hold his frustration any longer. Obiageli, you are spoiling this boy. You indulge his every whim, and it will ruin him. Chief's voice was stern, his face filled with the weight of his years of hard work. But Obiageli was quick to defend her son. Chief, this is our only son. Why are you so hard on him? Do you want him to suffer while we have all this wealth? It's not possible. Chief's eyes flashed with anger. Exactly because he's our only son, you should teach him responsibility. If my mother had pampered me like this, I wouldn't be the man I am today. I suffered and worked hard for everything we have. If you continue like this, Kingsley will grow up useless. Obiageli threw her head back and laughed, almost as if she had uncovered some hidden truth. Ah, Chief, now I understand. You want my son to suffer just because you did. Well, over my dead body. I prayed and fasted for this boy. And you think I will make him wash plates or clean the house? He has 5 sisters for that. Besides, those chores are meant for girls. Chief shook his head in disbelief. Obiageli would never understand. From that day, he gave up trying to change her mind and poured all his energy into his first daughter, Adaeze, preparing her to take over the family business. Obiageli had a firm grip on Kingsley's life, controlling every detail and decision. As a result, Kingsley grew up lazy and fully dependent on his mother for everything. He never learned how to make choices for himself, and Obiageli liked it that way. When Chief died, Kingsley was just 21, and instead of giving him time to find his footing, Obiageli immediately began pushing him to get married. His sisters objected, saying that Kingsley was too young and too immature to handle a family. Mama, he's not ready to be a husband, let alone a father, Adaeze, the older sister, argued. But Obiageli waved their concerns aside. No, my daughters, you are wrong. Kingsley does not need to be ready. I am here to teach him everything he needs to know. Your brother is the only man left in this family, now that your father is gone. He must settle down quickly and produce children to carry on your father's name." His sisters hesitated, but Obiageli's words made sense. The family name needed to live on. And so reluctantly, they agreed, and so began Obiageli's search for the perfect wife for her son. She wasn't looking for just any woman. No. Obiageli wanted someone who was gentle, well-behaved, and most importantly, a virgin. She believed a pure woman would ensure a healthy lineage. Someone whose body had never been touched, whose womb was untouched and untainted. City girls were out of the question in Obiageli's mind. She considered them wild and reckless. Determined to find someone suitable, she set out on a long journey back to her village, believing that only a village girl could meet her strict standards. Kingsley had no say in this. As always, whatever his mother decided was final. After a week of searching, Obiageli settled on Chiugo, the eldest daughter of Mazi Osondo, the village blacksmith. Chiugo came from a poor family. Her father had 13 children and barely enough money to care for them. When Obiageli approached with a marriage proposal, Chigo's parents jumped at the opportunity. To them, it was a chance to escape their poverty. They did not care that their daughter would be marrying a man she did not know or love. All they saw was the wealth and prestige Obiageli's family could offer. Dear lovers, can you believe that without Kingsley even being present, Obiageli and her late husband's kinsmen went to Chiugo's home and paid her dowry, and then took her to the city? Chiugo's parents did not protest, did not ask questions. They were too focused on the promise of a better life. Chiugo was sent off to begin her life with a man she had never met, in a marriage she had never wanted. All the while, Kingsley remained passive, too accustomed to letting his mother run his life to even care. Obiageli made sure her son and his new wife were well settled by getting them a comfortable house in the city. From the outside, it seemed like a perfect start for the young couple. However, despite not living with them, Obiageli's control over Kingsley remained strong. He had no real job or ambition, relying entirely on the monthly allowance his mother sent to cover all their expenses. Chiugo, still adjusting to her new life, found herself in a strange and frustrating situation. Whenever she needed something, whether it was food, clothes, or even money for the market, Kingsley's response was always the same: "Ask my mother." At first, Chiugo did not know how to react. Back in her village, men were the heads of their households, providing for their families. But here, in this new life, it seemed as though Kingsley had handed all responsibility over to his mother. Chiugo's heart sank each time she had to pick up the phone and ask Obiageli for permission to buy even the smallest things. "Mama, we need new pots for the kitchen," she would say timidly, and Obiageli, though polite, always made Chiugo feel like she was asking for too much. "Do you really need new pots now, Chiugo? Can't you manage what you have for a bit longer?" Obiageli's tone carried a subtle message. Nothing would happen without her approval. Chiugo, the naive village girl, was bewildered by this strange setup. She had never imagined a marriage where her husband wasn't the one to make decisions. She was used to men taking charge, but Kingsley was different. He was passive, always deferring to his mother. But even though this life was far from what she had dreamed of, Chiugo remained quiet and meek. She never raised her voice or challenged Kingsley, despite the growing confusion and discomfort she felt. She had been raised to respect her husband and his family, and so she swallowed her frustrations, telling herself that it was her duty to endure. Little did Chiugo know that this was only the beginning of the problem and challenges she would face in her new life. Trouble began to creep into Chiugo's marriage exactly 1 year after her wedding. Despite all the pressure and hope, there was still no sign of a baby. For Obiageli, this was unacceptable. One morning, while Chiugo was preparing breakfast, Obiageli stormed into the house, her face tight with frustration. "It's been a full year, Chiugo," she snapped, eyeing her daughter-in-law's flat stomach. "Your belly is still as flat as that of an agama lizard. Why have you not gotten pregnant? Do you think I brought you here to sit around, look pretty all day? Your mates are already carrying babies by this time. What's wrong with you?" Chiugo's heart shattered at those words. She had done everything expected of her, yet here she was, being accused and blamed for something she had no control about. But what hurt even more was Kingsley's silence. He just stood there, staring at the ground while his mother tore into his wife. Not once did he say a word to defend her or calm his mother down. Later that evening, Chiugo gathered the courage to confront Kingsley. She found him lounging on the couch, mindlessly flipping through TV channels as if nothing had happened. "Kingsley," she began softly, "why did you not say anything earlier when your mother spoke to me like that? Do you think it's fair for her to talk to me in that way?" Kingsley barely glanced at her. With a shrug, he replied, It's not like she's wrong, Chiugo. Shouldn't you be pregnant by now? That's what is expected, isn't it?" His words hit her like a cold slap. In that moment, Chiugo realized something deeply. She was on her own in this marriage. The man who was supposed to be her partner, her protector, was not even on her side. Kingsley's loyalty was tied to his mother, and she would always come first. The only person who showed Chiugo any warmth was Adaeze, Kingsley's elder sister. But Adaeze was always busy running the family business, and her rare visits did not provide the comfort Chiugo so desperately needed, though she offered kind words when she did speak. Her presence in Chiugo's life was like a flicker of light in a vast dark room, too brief to truly guide her. With no support from Kingsley and Obiageli's mounting pressure, Chiugo felt increasingly isolated in the one place that was supposed to be her home. As days turned into weeks and weeks stretched into months, Chiugo's despair grew heavier. There was still no sign of a baby. Every night, she lay awake in bed, silently crying into her pillow, while Kingsley snored beside her, oblivious to her pain. She often woke up in the dead of the night, sneaking into the small living room to kneel in prayer. Her whispers, barely loud enough to be heard, but her heart screamed in desperation. "Dear God," she prayed, "please do not let me be put to shame. Have mercy on me, even if it's just one child. Just one to wipe away my tears." She would plead, her hands clutched tightly in front of her. Tears streamed down her face as she prayed for a miracle, for any sign that her prayers were being heard. But the heavens remained silent. Her cries echoed only in the hollow walls of their home. Obiageli, meanwhile, seemed to take pleasure in making Chugo's life miserable. Every visit, every time she came into their home, she rained insults on Chugo. She barged into their home whenever she wanted, her presence filling the space like a dark cloud. If Chugo asked for anything, a little money for the market, or even a simple household item, Obiageli would use it as a chance to humiliate her. "Ah, so you need money now, eh?" Obiageli would sneer, crossing her arms and glaring at Chugo. "Money for what? To sit around and do nothing? Or do you think I pluck money from off a tree? If you had any sense, you'd be worrying about getting pregnant instead of running to me for every little thing. Look at you, sitting there as if you're a queen, but you've given me nothing. No grandson, no heir, no future for this family." Chugo would lower her head, swallowing the bitter tears, threatening to spill. She had no choice but to endure the torment, biting her tongue and forcing herself to be silent. But Obiageli was relentless, her words cutting deeper than any knife. "Back in my days," Obiageli continued, "a woman's worth was measured by how quickly she could bear children. But look at you. Months have passed, and you are still as barren as the day I found you in that village. If I had known this would be the case, I would have picked someone else." Chugo wanted to shout, to scream, but instead, she pressed her lips together and kept her eyes fixed on the floor. What hurt more than Obiageli's insults was Kingsley's complete indifference. He sat there, flipping through his phone, pretending not to hear anything. When Obiageli finished her tirade and finally stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her, Kingsley would look up casually as if nothing happened. One evening, after another particularly harsh visit from Obiageli, Chugo could not hold back any longer. As they sat at the dinner table, the silence between them thick and suffocating, she looked at Kingsley and finally spoke. "Why don't you ever say anything? Why do you let your mother speak to me like that? Don't you care how much it hurts?" Kingsley barely glanced up from his food, his voice annoyingly calm. "What do you want me to say, Chugo? My mother is not wrong. You've been here for almost 2 years, and there is still no child. What do you expect?" His words cut her deeper than any of Obiageli's insults ever could. She stared at him in disbelief, her heart breaking all over again. "I expect you to stand by me, to be my husband," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I did not think I would have to fight this battle alone." Kingsley shrugged, picking up his fork again. "It's not my battle to fight either. If you had gotten pregnant like every normal woman, then all this would not have happened. Don't blame my mother for anything, because if you think of it properly, it's your fault." Chugo swallowed hard, blinking back the tears that threatened to spill over. She wished she had never left her village in the first place. As the days passed, the distance between Kingsley and Chugo grew wider. Their already fragile relationship held together more by duty than love, began to crumble completely. The small moments of connection they once shared, however brief, disappeared, replaced by cold silence. One evening, Obiageli called Kingsley to her home. As he sat across from her in the large living room, she studied him for a moment before speaking, her voice low and persuasive. "My son," she began, "it's been over 2 years and still that woman has refused to give us a child. How long will we wait? How long will we allow her to waste our time?" She leaned in closer, her tone conspiratorial. "You are the only son of this family. You need a male child to carry on your father's legacy. If Chiugo cannot give us a child, then what's stopping you from seeking somewhere else?" Kingsley shifted uncomfortably, but did not interrupt. Obiageli continued, her voice more insistent. "There are plenty of women out there, women who are fertile and willing. You don't even need to marry them. Just be with one until she gives you a child. You know, a man needs options. You can't just sit and wait for a miracle that may never come." Her words sank in, just like they always did. Obiageli had a way of planting thoughts in Kingsley's mind, making her ideas seem like his own. As usual, her advice made sense to him. Nodding slowly, Kingsley let the seed take root. That night, Kingsley came home later than usual, the smell of alcohol faint on his breath, his eyes dull and distant. Chiugo noticed, of course, but said nothing. She had learned long ago that confronting him only led to more pain. Instead, she lay awake, her back turned to him, listening to his heavy breathing as he fell asleep. As the days went on, Kingsley's behavior grew more erratic. He began staying out even later, sometimes not returning until the early hours of the morning. Chiugo would stay up, staring at the ceiling, wondering where he was and who he was with. She knew he had no job, so it was not work keeping him out. She wanted to ask, to demand answers, but she also knew the cold truth. Asking would only bring more heartache. His usual dismissive reply would sting more than the silence. One night, Chiugo prepared his favorite meal, hoping that perhaps a good food might bring back some semblance of normalcy. But when Kingsley walked through the door, his expression was blank, and he barely glanced at the food on the table. He mumbled something about being tired and headed straight to bed, leaving Chiugo sitting alone at the dining table, staring at the untouched plates. The loneliness pressed down on her like a heavy blanket. She could not remember the last time they had shared a meaningful conversation, let alone a moment of tenderness. It was as if she no longer existed to him, just a shadow passing through the house, waiting for a miracle that might never come. She had tried all that she could, but nothing seemed to be working. Late that night, Chiugo knelt on the cold floor again, her hands clasped tightly in prayer. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "God, where are you? Please show me a way. Give me the strength to endure this, or bless me with a child I long for." Her voice cracked with desperation. "I don't know how much longer I can take this." In the quiet darkness, Chiugo felt the weight of her situation pressing down on her more than ever. She was trapped in a marriage that seemed to be crumbling before her eyes, with no way out and no one to turn to. The next morning, Kingsley left the house without a word, and Chugo watched him go, her heart heavy. She could not help but wonder if this was her life now, endlessly waiting, endlessly praying, with nothing but silence in return. As she cleaned the house, Chugo heard a knock on the door. It was Adaeze, her sister-in-law, the only person who had shown her kindness in the family. Adaeze noticed the sadness in Chugo's eyes immediately. "Chugo, what's wrong?" she asked, gently sitting down beside her. Chugo hesitated, but the weight of her burden was too much to bear alone. "Kingsley has been different lately. Distant. He stays out late and I don't even know where he goes," she said. Adaeze sighed, her eyes filled with sympathy. "I'm really sorry that you have to put up with all of this, Chugo. But do not lose hope. Things can still change. But then, I think it's time for you to find something you can do. Perhaps it would help you get your mind off things." Chugo looked at her, hands folded on her laps. "I managed to finish secondary school. There's nothing I know how to do. Even if I tried to get a job, no one would employ me." Adaeze's heart went out to the young girl. When her mother started, she could not be stopped. But deep down, Adaeze knew she had to help this young, naive woman. "Take your time, Chugo. Think of something you can do. When you decide, I'll be ready to listen to you. And don't worry about Kingsley. I will talk to him," she said, placing a comforting hand on Chugo's hands. Chugo nodded, grateful for Adaeze's concern. But deep down, she wondered if change was even possible. Kingsley wasn't the man she had married, or perhaps he never was, but maybe finding something to keep her busy would help her worry less. As the days dragged on, Chugo continued to pray, hoping for a miracle. But with each passing day, Kingsley drifted further away, and the cracks in their marriage grew wider. Unknown to Chugo, Kingsley had started having an affair with a young woman his mother had introduced him to. Her name was Amaka, the daughter of one of Obiageli's old friends. Obiageli had carefully selected Amaka for a specific reason. Amaka already had given birth to a son out of wedlock, a proof that she was productive. This time, Obiageli wanted no uncertainties. In her mind, Amaka was the perfect candidate to give her the grandson Chugo had failed to provide. From their first meeting, Kingsley and Amaka hit it off. Amaka, with her bold charm and confident demeanor, made Kingsley feel something he hadn't felt before, desired and in control. She was sophisticated and looked like a woman who was experienced and knew what she wanted. But Amaka had her own reasons for being so eager. The moment she laid her eyes on Kingsley, she knew this was her chance. Coming from a middle-class background and having a son to cater for, she had been hoping and dreaming of a man who could elevate her status. Someone wealthy, someone influential. And now, here was Kingsley, a perfect target. His family had more money than she could ever imagine. And with his mother already on her side, Amaka felt she had all the cards in her hands. As they sat together in the living room one evening, a faint smile crossed her lips as she fantasized about the future. "Someday, I'll be his wife," she thought, watching him as he absent-mindedly scrolled through his phone. "And when that happens, I'll be treated like the queen I deserve to be." Amaka, Kingsley said, pulling her out of her thoughts. You know, this arrangement must be kept a secret. Amaka leaned closer, placing a reassuring hand on his chest. Of course, I know how to keep secrets, but I also know what I deserve. I'm not a side piece. I want something real. Kingsley looked at her, guilt flickering in his eyes for a moment, but he quickly brushed it aside. Amaka had given him an escape from the suffocating life he shared with Chiugo, and he did not want to ruin it. I'll take care of you, he said, his voice low. You and your son. You won't have to worry about anything. Amaka smiled, satisfied for the moment, but she had bigger plans. To her, this was only the beginning. She imagined herself sitting in Obiageli's grand house, wearing expensive clothes, attending to high-profile events, and finally being seen as the wife of a wealthy man. Her son would inherit Kingsley's wealth, and she would rise to the life of comfort she had always dreamed of. Kingsley, on the other hand, was slowly being pulled deeper into the affair. The longer he stayed with Amaka, the more distant he became from Chiugo. He found excuses to leave the house early and come back late, barely exchanging words with his wife. If Chiugo noticed the change, she did not say much, but deep down, her suspicions were starting to grow. Meanwhile, Obiageli was pleased with the development. She did not care if Kingsley was cheating on Chiugo, as long as her son ended up with a woman who could give her the grandson she desperately wanted. She encouraged Kingsley to continue visiting Amaka. Hopefully, she will get pregnant soon. She even went as far as discreetly sending gifts to Amaka and her son, further strengthening the bond between them. As time passed, Amaka grew more confident and started dropping subtle hints to Kingsley about making their relationship official. I'm tired of hiding, she said one evening. I want to be by your side, not just in the shadows. Don't you want that too? Kingsley, trapped between the expectations of his mother and the pressure from Amaka, nodded slowly. I do, but things are complicated. Complicated? Amaka raised an eyebrow. Or are you just being afraid to change? Kingsley, you deserve better. I can give you better. I can give you what Chiugo can't. Her words echoed in his mind long after he left her apartment. That night, for the first time, he began to seriously consider a future with Amaka permanently in it. Little did he know, those thoughts were exactly what Amaka had been planting in his mind all along. She wasn't just after his heart, she was after his entire life. Desperate to fulfill his mother's wishes and keep her happy, Kingsley began to talk with Amaka about his need for a child. One evening, as they sat in her apartment, sipping wine, he nervously glanced at her. Amaka, he began slowly. I think it's time we start thinking about, having a child. Amaka, who had been lost in thought, snapped her gaze at him, her eyes narrowing slightly. A child? She repeated, setting down her glass. Before we even talk about that, Kingsley, I need some assurances. Kingsley felt a pit in his stomach. He knew this was coming. What do you mean? He asked cautiously. Amaka crossed her arms, leaning back on the sofa, her eyes never leaving his.
I'm not going to bear a child for you while your wife still holds her place in your home. If you want me to have your baby, you need to divorce Chugo and marry me. I need to know that my position is secure. I won't settle for being the other woman. I'm worth more than that. Kingsley looked down at her, a smile on his face. All right, I'll talk to my mother and know what she thinks. Amaka looked at him surprised. Your mother? Yes, Kingsley replied. If she agrees, then there's no problem. The idea was absurd to Amaka, but she was a woman on a mission. She needed to exercise patience. The next day, Kingsley made his way to his mother's house. As soon as he walked through the grand entrance, Obiageli sensed something was bothering him. What is it, my son? She asked sharply, setting down her cup of tea as she studied her son's troubled expression. Kingsley sighed deeply, taking a seat across from her. It's Amaka. She says she won't have my child unless I divorce Chugo and marry her first. Obiageli's eyes darkened, her lips tightening. What nonsense is this? She hissed, leaning forward. Divorce Chugo before that girl has even proved that she can give us a child? Are you out of your mind? Kingsley, do you think I'm a fool? But Mom, Kingsley said. No! Obiageli interrupted, her voice sharp. I will not take that risk. Amaka must get pregnant first, before anything else. A woman who cannot provide a child has no place in our family, and I won't let her trick us into making her a permanent part without guarantees. She gets pregnant first, and only then will we think about a future for her. Kingsley swallowed hard. His mother's words left no room for debate. There was no going against Obiageli when she had made up her mind. He knew that if he wanted to stay in her good graces and secure his place in the family, he would have to convince Amaka to agree. Later that evening, he met with Amaka again. My mother won't agree to a divorce before you get pregnant. She wants a proof that you can have a child first. Amaka's face remained unreadable for a moment, and then a sly smile crept onto her lips. So that's her condition, she said softly. She let out a shocked, mocking laugh. Your mother never misses a beat, does she? Kingsley, unsure of where this was going, watched her closely. Amaka was quiet for a while, thinking through her options. She knew she couldn't push Obiageli too far yet, but she also wasn't going to let go of the chance to secure her place in this wealthy family. She had been playing the long game, and now it was time to make a calculated move. Fine, she said after a long pause, her tone now smooth and agreeable. If that's what it takes, I'll have your child. But Kingsley, know this. Once I get pregnant, I expect more than just promises. I want my place in your family solidified. Kingsley nodded, relieved that she was finally agreeing. I promise, Amaka, he said earnestly. Once you give me a child, we'll talk about the future. Amaka smiled, but her mind was already racing ahead. She knew what she wanted, and she wasn't going to stop until she had it all. The wealth, the status, and her name firmly attached to the Obi family. As Kingsley left her apartment that night, Amaka stood by the window, watching his car drive away into the distance. Her lips curled into a determined smile. "A child," she whispered to herself. "That's just the beginning. Soon, I'll have everything." Months later, as Obiageli had hoped, Amaka's pregnancy was confirmed. The news spread like wildfire through the household, and Obiageli was practically glowing with joy. It was as though the child in Amaka's womb was her personal victory, a vindication of all her harsh decisions. She wasted no time. "Amaka must move into Kingsley's house immediately," Obiageli decreed, her voice brimming with authority. When her daughters heard what was happening, they were furious. Adaeze, the eldest daughter, was not having it. "What is wrong with you, mother? This is not right. Let these people be and stop controlling their lives. Chigo does not deserve this. Do you even know if your son is not the one with the problem? Have you even thought about finding a medical solution?" Obiageli's head sparked. "How dare you say that, Adaeze? My son is as healthy as a horse. Amaka is a proof that he is a man. That barren woman should know her place. If she cannot produce a child, then she should give honor to someone who is productive. If she is not happy, then she can go back to her poverty-stricken father's house." Adaeze was so disappointed in her mother. She knew how controlling she could be, but this level of selfishness was alarming. Chigo, on the other hand, was devastated. The walls of her world had crumbled before her very eyes. How could everything she once held dear be taken away so quickly? She stood by the doorway as Amaka arrived, bag in hand, belly just starting to show. It was as if her presence erased Chigo's entire existence. And then came the final blow. Obiageli turned to her with a wicked smile and said, "Chigo, move your things to the spare room. Amaka will be taking your place in the master bedroom." It felt like a dagger to her heart. Chigo's vision blurred with tears as she numbly gathered her belongings. Her hands trembled as she packed her things, each item a reminder of the life she once had, a life she no longer recognized. That night, she lay on the cold, unfamiliar bed of the spare room. Her tears soaked the pillow as she sobbed uncontrollably. There was no one to hold her, no one to offer comfort in her moments of despair. Things only worsened as the days dragged on. Chigo was treated like a ghost in her own home. It was as if she had ceased to exist. Obiageli's disdain for her grew even more palpable. The older woman's words dripping with venom at every chance she got. "Look at Amaka, already giving us what you could never provide," Obiageli would sneer. Her eyes filled with contempt as she looked at Chigo up and down. "A real woman should carry her husband's child. You are just wasting space." Obiageli did not stop there. She ordered that Amaka be treated like royalty. "Amaka must not lift a finger," she declared. "No stress is allowed. Chigo, you will handle everything from now on. Cooking, cleaning, and taking care of everything that Amaka needs." Chigo felt the sharp sting of humiliation with each task she completed. As she scrubbed the floors, the harsh words from Obiageli echoed in her mind. Amaka, of course, did not make things any easier. She relished in her newfound power, her belly growing rounder with each passing day. "Chigo, "Fetch me some water," she would say, in a tone thick with entitlement. "Oh, and don't forget to iron my clothes for tomorrow." Chugo would nod silently, biting her lip to keep the tears from falling. The truth was, Amaka wasn't just bent on making Chugo's life difficult. She wanted to push her out entirely. She knew that if Chugo left, she would have Kingsley all to herself. The thought of ruling over the household and solidifying her place in the family made her grin with satisfaction. One afternoon, as Chugo was cooking in the kitchen, Amaka entered, her steps deliberately slow. She leaned against the counter, watching Chugo struggle with the heavy pot. "You know," Amaka began, casually, her voice laced with mock sympathy, "you could make this easier on yourself. Why don't you just leave? There's really no reason for you to stay here anymore." Chugo stiffened, gripping the spoon tightly in her hand. "This is my home," she said quietly, though her voice trembled. Amaka laughed, a cruel sound that echoed off the kitchen walls. "Your home? Oh, Chugo, you are living in a fantasy. You don't belong here anymore. Haven't you realized that already? Kingsley doesn't love you. He never did. Look at you now, reduced to a maid, while I carry his child. You should save yourself the pain instead, and just leave." Chugo's heart pounded in her chest, but she kept her head down, refusing to let Amaka see the tears that threatened to spill. She had no words to counter Amaka's cruel taunts, but deep inside, she clung to the little hope and dignity she had left. She would not let Amaka break her. Not yet. As the days passed, the tension in the house grew unbearable. Kingsley, oblivious to the storm brewing between the women, seemed content with the situation. He barely acknowledged Chugo's presence. His eyes were only for Amaka, and he made sure he was able to give her anything that she wanted. Chugo, now a mere shadow of herself, continued to serve in silence, praying for strength to endure. But every night, she sat alone in the spare room, wondering how much longer she could bear this life of suffering. How much longer until the last piece of her heart shattered. Amaka's constant mockery of Chugo's childlessness was relentless. Every day, she found new ways to belittle her. "What kind of woman can't even do the one thing she's made for?" Amaka would taunt, her hand resting on her swelling belly. It's not your fault. Maybe you were just never meant to be a wife and a mother, Chugo. Look at me, doing what you couldn't. Kingsley and I will soon have a family. And you, well, you'll still be barren and lonely." Chugo kept her head low, biting back the urge to respond. She knew better than to engage in a war of words with Amaka. It would only make things worse. The last thing she wanted was to stir up more trouble in a household that had already turned into a nightmare. But Amaka's words weighed heavily on her heart. She could no longer bear it. One evening, as Kingsley returned home, Chugo quietly approached him, hoping for some semblance of support. "My husband," she began softly, her voice trembling as she spoke. "Amaka keeps mocking me, saying things that are hurtful. Please, help me talk to her. I don't know how much more of this I can take." Kingsley did not even look up from his phone, his expression indifferent. If you're tired of being here, "You can leave," he replied coldly. Chigo stared at him in disbelief, her heart sinking. His words confirmed what she had been dreading for months. He no longer cared about her, if he ever did at all. She meant nothing to him now. The man she had once shared her dreams with had become a stranger, and her place in his life had been reduced to nothing. That night, Chigo sat again in the spare room, staring up at the ceiling, her mind racing. She could no longer deny the truth. She had lost. But as she thought back to the promise Adaeze had made to her, something stirred up within her. She had done nothing wrong. She did not deserve this life of humiliation and despair. Maybe it was time to finally do something for herself. She remembered how much she had loved teaching children back in her village. Under the big Udara tree in her father's compound, she had gathered the children and taught them how to read and write. It was the only way she could continue her passion, as her father had no money to send her to further her education. But she loved it nonetheless. Watching the children learn brought her a sense of joy and fulfillment. Adaeze's words echoed in her mind. "You deserve better, Chigo. When you are ready, let me know." It had been months since Adaeze made that promise, and Chigo had not given it much thought at the time. She was too consumed with trying to make her marriage work. But now, after everything she had endured, she was ready. She was ready to give herself the life she wanted. She would go back to school and become a teacher she had always dreamed of becoming. With newfound determination, Chigo picked up her phone and dialed Adaeze's number. Adaeze answered on the first ring, her voice warm but concerned. "Chigo, how are you doing?" Chigo's voice wavered as she spoke. "Auntie Adaeze, I'm ready. I want to take you up on your offer. I've been thinking. I want to become a teacher. I want to go back to school and get trained." There was a brief silence on the other end, and then Adaeze let out a sigh of relief. "Oh, Chigo, I'm so glad to hear you say this. I've been worried about you for so long, and I hate how you've been treated. But now, you've made the best decision for yourself." Auntie Adaeze's words brought tears to Chigo's eyes. But this time, they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of hope. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt a glimmer of excitement about her future. Adaeze continued, her voice filled with resolve. "Leave everything to me, Chigo. I'll make sure you get into the best teacher training program. We will make your dream a reality." Chigo smiled through her tears, feeling lighter than she had in months. For so long, she had felt trapped with no way out. But now, with Adaeze's help, she could finally see a way forward. She was going to rebuild her life. She was going to become someone she could be proud of. Chigo made a silent vow to herself. No matter what happened, no matter how much pain she had endured, she would rise above it. She deserved better, and she was going to claim the life she had always dreamed of. As the conversation with Adaeze ended, Chigo looked around the room that had once felt like her prison. Now, it felt like the starting point of a new journey. A journey towards freedom, purpose, and fulfillment. One morning, the house was eerily quiet. Amaka came out to the long hallway, but something felt off. She glanced at the room across the hallway where Chigo had been staying, and it was empty. There was no sign of her, no presence, nothing. "Kingsley, where's Chugo?" Amaka asked, a mocking edge to her voice. Kingsley shrugged, indifferent. Who knows? Maybe she finally realized she wasn't wanted here. The thought made Amaka smirk, satisfied. Good riddance to bad rubbish, she muttered under her breath. It was clear that Chugo had left without a word. Neither Kingsley nor Amaka bothered to call or check on her. To them, her absence was a relief, as if a weight had been lifted off the household. They did not care where she went or what had become of her. Obiageli went back to the village to inform her parents of the new development. When she reached Chugo's village, she wasted no time twisting the story to her advantage. With a tone of feigned sadness and indignation, she informed Chugo's parents that their daughter had abandoned her matrimonial home. She just up and left, as if she had no respect for the sanctity of marriage, Obiageli declared, clutching her wrapper dramatically. What kind of woman leaves her husband's house? If she was truly a wife, she would have stayed. Chugo's parents, particularly her father, was furious. As much as they were disappointed in Chugo's behavior, tradition had to be followed. The dowry that was paid for Chugo's hand in marriage had to be returned. It was a harsh and painful reality, one that branded Chugo's decision as dishonorable in the eyes of the village. But unknown to Obiageli, Chugo's parents weren't the naive villagers she thought them to be. Deep down, they suspected something wasn't right with the story Obiageli had spun. Chugo had always been a good girl, meek, hardworking, and respectful. It wasn't like her to just walk away without reason. But the situation was delicate, and for now, they would keep their thoughts to themselves. Back in Kingsley's house, the atmosphere seemed to shift. With Chugo gone, Amaka officially took her place as Kingsley's wife, but her victory was short-lived. At first, everything appeared to go well. Obiageli treated Amaka like a queen. She was pampered endlessly, showered with gifts, money, and attention. Every craving she had was catered to. If Amaka wanted anything, all she had to do was say the word, and Obiageli would rush to fulfill her every demand. It was as though Amaka had entered into a dream, luxury, comfort, and the promise of a prosperous future. Her pregnancy was like a golden ticket to everything she had desired. But Amaka soon realized that her ideal life was not as perfect as she had imagined. While she was basking in Obiageli's attention, she began to notice a disturbing pattern. Whenever she needed money or wanted to make a decision about the house, Kingsley never acted on his own. He always had to consult Obiageli first. Initially, Amaka brushed it off as a sign of respect for his mother. But soon, it became apparent that it was something more. Kingsley was not just consulting Obiageli, he was being controlled by her. Every financial decision, every major purchase, even the day-to-day affairs of the household, everything was decided by Obiageli. Kingsley could not lift a finger without first seeking his mother's approval. "Babe, can't we buy a new car?" Amaka asked one evening, noticing how outdated their current one had become. "I'll have to ask my mother," Kingsley replied, his tone casual,
as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Amaka felt a wave of frustration rise within her. Ask his mother for a car? As the days passed, Amaka's disgust grew. This was not the life she had envisioned. She thought she had married into wealth and affluence, only to find herself in a house where a grown man was nothing more than a puppet to his mother. Kingsley was weak. He had no spine, no independence, no real authority, and Amaka hated it. But she wasn't one to give up so easily. She had made it this far, and she wasn't about to let herself be pushed aside. She knew her condition. The pregnancy was her trump card. As long as she carried Kingsley's child, Obiageli would bend over, backward, to keep her happy. And Amaka was determined to use that to her full advantage. One morning, as she sat in the living room, she casually called out to Obiageli, "Mama, I've been thinking, this baby will need the best. We will need new furniture, a better crib, perhaps even redecorate the nursery." Obiageli's eyes lit up. "Of course, my dear, anything for the baby. You just tell me what you need and I will make sure it's done." And just like that, Amaka had Obiageli wrapped around her finger. She knew how to play the game. She made sure her demands were always centered around the baby, knowing fully well that Obiageli would spare no expense when it came to her precious grandchild. From new clothes to the latest baby gadgets, Amaka got whatever she wanted. But despite the material comfort, Amaka couldn't shake the growing resentment she felt. Every time she saw Kingsley deferring to his mother, she was reminded of how powerless she truly was in this marriage. And as much as she hated to admit it, she was starting to feel trapped, just like Chiugo had once been. But Amaka wasn't Chiugo. She wasn't going to let herself be sidelined. Not by Kingsley, not by his mother. She had a plan, and she would make sure that when the time came, she would be the one in control. But for now, she played the game, biding her time, collecting her favors, and waiting for the perfect moment to make her move. After all, she knew better than anyone. Patience always paid off. Years had passed, and Amaka had successfully solidified her place within the Obi family, becoming the mother of 4 sons. These boys were her prized possessions, her guarantee of lifelong comfort and control. With each child, Amaka became more deeply entrenched in the family, and soon it was her, not Obiageli, who was dictating the terms of the household. Kingsley, once a man who followed his mother, was now dancing to Amaka's tune. Obiageli adored her grandsons, and Amaka had become the apple of her eye. She now revered Amaka, praising her for bringing forth sons to carry out the family legacy. For Amaka, this was the ultimate victory. She had achieved everything she had dreamed of when she first entered the Obi's lives. She had wealth, power, and the unquestioning loyalty of both Kingsley and Obiageli. But as her sons grew, Amaka's ambitions began to expand. She toyed with a new idea that she couldn't shake: relocating abroad with Kingsley and their boys. The world outside Nigeria was filled with opportunities, and Amaka was determined that her sons would have access to the very best life had to offer. "We should take the boys abroad," she told Kingsley one evening. They deserve the best education, the best life. This country has nothing more to offer them. At first, Kingsley hesitated. He loved Nigeria, and despite everything, it was his home. Besides, how was he going to cope without his mother? But Amaka had a way of convincing him. "Think of their future, Kingsley," she said, her voice dripping with persuasion. "The world is changing. Don't you want our sons to have a better life than we did? Abroad, they'll have endless opportunities." Obiageli too was easily swayed. Her grandsons were her pride and joy, and the thought of them living abroad in comfort and prestige appealed to her. "You are right, Amaka," Obiageli said. "The boys deserve the best. Money isn't a problem. We can make it happen." And so, the plans were set in motion. Kingsley and Amaka began preparing for their move abroad, lining up schools and making the necessary arrangements. Everything seemed perfect, but little did Amaka know her carefully constructed empire was about to crumble. As part of the immigration process, they were required to undergo a series of medical tests. One of these tests involved a DNA analysis to confirm parentage. Amaka had not anticipated this, but it seemed like a formality, one she did not have much thought to. After all, she had Kingsley and Obiageli wrapped around her. What could go wrong? Days later, when the results came in, a chilling revelation shook the entire family. Kingsley stood in stunned silence, staring at the papers in his hands. The results were clear. He was not the biological father of Amaka's children. None of them. The news hit Kingsley like a thunderbolt. His whole world collapsed in that moment. For 10 years, he had believed that he was the father of 4 boys, poured his energy, hopes, and love into them, only to discover that it was all a lie. His hands trembled. His mind raced. How could this be? Obiageli too was shattered. The betrayal, the deception, it was too much for her to bear. The shock triggered a heart attack, but she survived. When Kingsley confronted Amaka, his voice quivered with both fury and heartbreak. How could you? How could you deceive me like this? But Amaka was unapologetic. When she suspected that Kingsley could not get her pregnant, she became desperate and decided to try getting pregnant through another man. She took in and no one suspected a thing. And so she continued until she had 4 children. Her secret had been safe until now. But even in the face of confrontation, her face held no remorse as she crossed her arms and stared him down with her words sharp and cutting. "Did you really think I would just sit by and let you and your mother treat me the way you treated Chugo? Never. I am not some meek, naive woman like she was. I am a woman who knows what she wants, and I will do anything to get it." Kingsley's heart sank as her words cut through him. Amaka's eyes flashed with defiance, her lips curling into a sneer. "You couldn't father a child, Kingsley. Did you ever think that maybe it wasn't Chugo's fault? That you were the problem all along?" "No, you did not. It's always my mother this, my mother that. You cannot think for yourself for once. Go and marry your mother Maybe she can give you a child. Her words echoed in Kingsley's mind. His entire being felt hollow. He had allowed his mother to control his life for so long, and in the end, it had cost him everything. He had thrown away his marriage only to be deceived by the very woman his mother had approved of. The pain was unbearable. In desperation, Kingsley sought out the truth. He decided to get himself checked, just as Amaka had suggested. Perhaps, somewhere in his mind, he was clinging to the hope that this was all a nightmare, that Amaka was lying, that the results were wrong. But when the doctor returned with his test results, Kingsley's heart sank even deeper. "Your sperm count is extremely low, Mr. Obi," the doctor said, his tone matter of fact, but not unkind. "In fact, your sperm is so weak that it cannot fertilize an egg. It's highly unlikely that you'll be able to father a child naturally." Kingsley's world, already shattered, crumbled completely. He had spent a decade living a lie. The 4 boys he had believed were his legacy were not his. And now, he had to face the harsh reality that he could never father a child of his own. As Kingsley walked out of the doctor's office, Amaka's words continued to haunt him. Maybe it wasn't Chigo's fault after all. Kingsley sat in silence, his mind heavy with regret. He played every decision. Every moment he let his mother take control of his life. "If only I had been a man. If only I had made my own choices," he muttered to himself. Shame washing over him. He had pushed away the one person who truly cared about him. Now he was left with nothing but bitter memories of his past mistakes. His sisters, all married and settled in their own lives, heard about what had transpired. They were not surprised. "You both got exactly what you deserved," they said, their voices cold and unforgiving. They had long warned their brother about Obiageli's meddling ways and his lack of backbone, but he had refused to listen. Now the consequences of his choices were clear for everyone to see. Obiageli, on the other hand, was crushed. The once powerful matriarch, who had controlled every aspect of her son's life, was left with nothing. No husband, no heir, and worst of all, no respect from her beloved son. Kingsley, heartbroken and betrayed, wanted nothing to do with her. The distance between them grew, and she was left isolated, a shadow of the woman she once was. Obiageli sat in her room, staring at the empty walls. Her mind wandered back to the early days, when everything seemed to be in her control. She wished she had listened to her husband. Now, she was living the consequences of her manipulations, and there was no one left to blame but herself. A few months later, after much soul-searching, Kingsley decided it was time to break free from his misery. He cut his overgrown hair and stepped out into the world, determined to start afresh. One afternoon, he visited a mall to pick up a few items. As he wandered through the aisles, his gaze landed on someone familiar, a face he never thought he'd see again. It was Chiugo. She looked radiant, sophisticated, and more beautiful than he ever remembered. But it was unmistakably her. She stood with a tall, handsome man beside her, holding the hands of 3 cheerful, beautiful children. For a moment, Kingsley's heart sank. He was frozen, his mind struggling to process what was unfolding in front of him.
Chigo's eyes met his. She too seemed momentarily surprised, but then her expression softened into a smile. "Hello, Kingsley," she said, her voice calm and composed. Kingsley, caught off guard, could only manage a small nod, his throat dry. Chigo turned to the man beside her. "Babe, this is Kingsley," she introduced, her tone steady. "Kingsley, meet my husband, Ejiro." Ejiro extended a hand toward Kingsley, a knowing look in his eyes. He had heard everything that had happened, the trials, the heartache, the humiliation Chigo had endured in her past life with him. Despite the anger that simmered beneath his calm demeanor, he chose grace. He shook Kingsley's hand, resisting the urge to say more or do something he would regret. "I'm sorry about what Amaka did to you," Ejiro said instead, his voice filled with sympathy. "Auntie Daisy told us everything." Kingsley, still reeling from the encounter, could barely meet Ejiro's gaze. "No," he replied, shaking his head, his voice heavy with guilt. "I should be the one apologizing. I treated Chigo horribly. Please forgive me, Chigo. I'm sorry." Chigo, ever the epitome of grace, smiled gently. "Kingsley, I don't hold anything against you. Honestly, if not for all that happened, I wouldn't be standing here today with the life I've built and the family I've been blessed with." He felt his heart crack open, realizing that he had lost not only Chigo, but the future they might have had. "I prefer to see everything positively," Chigo continued, her eyes filled with love. "All the pain, all the struggles, they led me to the right path, and I don't regret it. I have a beautiful family now, and a husband who loves me for who I am. I truly hope you find peace and fulfillment in your life someday." Ejiro, standing beside his wife, squeezed her hand gently, his pride in her evident. Kingsley, still rooted to the spot, could only watch as Chigo and her family turned to leave. His mind swelled with memories of what was and what could never be. For several minutes, he stood there, staring off into space, realizing the full weight of the life he had let slip through his fingers. As he watched them walk away, laughter filled the air around Chigo and her children, a sound that haunted him long after they had disappeared from view. Hey lovers, thank you for listening to this story. If you're new here, welcome to our community. I hope you enjoyed listening to this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you have not done so already, please hit the subscribe button. And to support the growth of our community, give this video a big thumbs up. If you have learned something, please let us know in the comment section. If you know someone who needs to hear this story, do not hesitate to share. I'll take my leave now, but I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.